Welcome to Hope for Your Pelvic Floor, the podcast where we stop managing women's symptoms and start making sense of their bodies. I'm Claire Sparrow, Pilates educator, pelvic health specialist, and best-selling author. And here we talk honestly and openly about what women are told, what the evidence actually says, and how real change happens. Welcome back, everyone. This is episode 57. Can you believe? We're into July now. The year is just flying by, and we are going to be wrapping up season 5 of the podcast in a few weeks. And I wanted to make sure that I closed the season positively and also kind of with a bit of a full stop on something that I've been teasing out and sharing with you along the journey over the past few months. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in a few moments. Today's episode is titled Wearing a Pad Isn't Giving Up. How to tell if it's helping or holding you back. Really, it's this pad or not to pad question that feels quite small, practical, day-to-day decision. It's something that for many of you listening, you're just grabbing a packet of pads when you're doing the supermarket shop. You're doing it it's like part of your day-to-day routine. And it actually is quite quietly telling you a little story about whether you think you can change or not, how you're making that decision. So the real question underneath it, is the pad helping you to move forward, take action, or is it helping you to stay put? And it's not that one is right and one is wrong. It's really just asking the question and seeing the layer beneath that autopilot, the maybe not even a question or a decision that you're consciously making. So this is what we're going to cover in today's episode, and I'm going to share where the inspiration for this one came from. But first, I want to let you in to the exciting news that the very long-awaited mini course Beyond Kegels is ready. If you are on my list, my email list, where I share every week something that I think will be of value to you, some tips, hints, some things similar to what we talk about on the podcast, you will already have heard about this in your inbox from me, that there is a brand new course. I've been working on this for what feels like forever. It takes quite a bit of process to go from I see there's a problem that I can help women solve to actually all the steps it takes to get it ready and get it out there for you. And really, this course has simply come about because the question that I get asked all the time about whole body pelvic health, the method that I've created, is it good for incontinence? And my answer, of course, is, well, yes, it is. What I appreciate is that actually it's not that obvious. Women are generally not necessarily aware of the different types of incontinence, and that in itself is a huge piece of this puzzle that I felt I wanted to solve for women, to really break this down, spell it out. Here are the differences, and this course Beyond Kegels really answers the differences. It doesn't just tell you what they are, it gives you the solutions. It also gives you the solution if you've got both stress and urge incontinence, and the lesser talked about, if there can be such a thing, is bowel incontinence. So I even give some classes and information and education on that as well. So it's really covering incontinence in a very comprehensive way through practice. So actual exercises and classes from teeny tiny, like a minute and 5 minutes, to 25-minute classes that will give you the specific exercises for the different types of incontinence. All of them are going to be great for everything, but it helps you to really understand and appreciate what's specific to each one. So I'm thrilled that we are there. We are crossing that finish line as we speak, and it's out there, and I'm thrilled to share it, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your feedback and the results that you gain from it. So check your inbox. It should be there for you to look at what that involves. So let's now get on with the episode today, talking about pads. And it's an interesting one for me to talk about because, of course, we spoke about the pessaries for prolapse previously and the slight shift in perspective that I've had about that. And I think it's very similar here. And it was because someone spoke to me about how that particular episode really resonated with them, and did that also apply when it came to incontinence. So I thought, right, let me really think about this and dig into it. What I believe and what I see in the women that I'm working with, hundreds of women and thousands, in fact, over several years of doing this work, I see kind of 4 distinct camps when it comes to the use of incontinence pads. So one is this kind of bridge, the idea that a pad gives you a little bit of security. It gives you some assurance. So then you can maybe relax, and that relaxation helps you to be able to retrain the function of your pelvic floor. The fear of leaking is what keeps us braced and tense and shallow breathing up here in the chest. And when you've got the pad, it might just take a little bit of that fear away when you're just doing your everyday activities, and then the body can actually just step up and do the work. So that's one kind of camp that I see, is that bridge, that it's giving the relief that helps that fear just slip away a little bit. And then camp 2 is the kind of trap, or it might make you accept and not find a way forward. The pad becomes the answer or the answer instead of the assistant. So it becomes just comfortable enough, and that just keeps this undercurrent almost, that the retraining never really starts because the pads are just there doing that job, rather than being, like I say, an assistant for your body to be able to change. Then there's camp 3, which I'll admit is really where I was when I was experiencing incontinence, and that's the flat out refusal. I do not want to wear a pad, because similar to my experience with prolapse, it just feels like a weakness, like I'm giving in if I was to wear a pad. And I know so many women are like white knuckling it with their pelvic floor, hoping that they're going to get home in time, hoping that they'll make it to the loo, or they stay home, stop exercising, shrink down, and actually avoiding things that a pad would have helped, that would have gone back to the first camp where it's the bridge. You know, if they wore the pad, it would have been the bridge. And that refusal is, it's a really interesting one when you start to think about it. And then camp 4 that I see is the kind of wait and see, the watch and wait. Maybe this was, I mean, when I was in denial, I think I've gone through probably all of these phases, but when I was in denial, it was that, I'll just wake up tomorrow and it'll fix itself. It'll be fine. I will have just resolved. I'll wake up one day and it'll just be working and I'll be continent again, or my prolapse will have gone. You know, it's this hoping without any action kind of thing. No retraining, just that I'll just wait. It'll be fine. And it's almost for me, it was almost not just the wait, but denial, that I just was like, oh, if I do something, that means I'm admitting it, kind of thing. And I wonder, as you listen to those 4 different distinctions or camps, I've called them, do you see yourself in one of those or a different one altogether? These are just the 4 that I've seen time and time again, but maybe there's something different for you. What about if the, 3 of those 4 are more driven by fear or avoidance and not by a kind of decision? Camp 1 is the one where actually we're choosing the pad really purposefully. And a pad can actually be a tool, not a verdict, not, you're weak or you're giving in or, that somehow you're accepting it, that actually it is a way forward. It's a tool potentially for you. It says nothing about your worth and nothing about whether you can change or not. A client recently told me that she'd listened to this podcast episode, the one I mentioned before, where I talked about pessaries, and actually a pessary wearing when you have prolapse might give you a little bit of reassurance so that you feel safe almost to do some movement to help to retrain your pelvic floor. It relaxes you. It changes your nervous system so that you feel calmer. And when you're in that state, you're then able to heal and change and move forwards. That's just science. It's fact. You have to be in that state. And she asked me, would it be the same when it comes to incontinence and the stress incontinence that she was particularly referring to? Because she was really feeling like her life was not trapped, almost trapped, because the thing that she went out and did to kind of stress and get some exercise and feel better was to just go for a short. It was like a 3K run, not some run. I'd applaud. Wasn't a big thing, but she felt like she had to stop doing that because of her incontinence. And it was an interesting question because a pessary is totally different to a pad. However, the kind of psychological difference and the ability to move forward and take action is quite similar. And she found that thread, that connection really, really clearly from that episode. And she realized that from that, just making that connection and seeing that thread, that she had a choice. And I cannot tell you how huge that is. And I teach this in the membership. I teach it to the mentees that I teach to teach whole body pelvic health all over the world. And I tell them that we are teaching women they have a choice. You listening right now have a choice. We all have a choice. And sometimes it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like we have a choice. And this particular client, her choice was that running, even a small run once a week, mattered enough to her as a whole woman that she wanted to keep doing it. So she went for a run, wore the pad, and actually she hardly leaked at all. She felt much better, not just because she had the feeling of autonomy to make the choice to do the thing that made her feel good, but that actually because she was more relaxed, her pelvic floor was functioning better just because of that. And she's continuing to do the whole body pelvic health work underlying all of that. So she's wearing the pad to go for the run, but she's also consciously, consistently doing the underpinning work that's changing her pelvic floor capacity and changing her pelvic floor story moving forward. So she's not wearing the pad and just forgetting about the incontinence and the experience of that. She's literally wearing the pad as the bridge. That first camp that we spoke about, the pad is the bridge to help her to move forwards and change her pelvic floor story. And she felt capable. She could do something she enjoyed. She felt better just in the whole of her mind, body, physically, everything. And again, not because the pad fixed anything, because it didn't. It was a bridge, a gateway, an opportunity, a choice that she could make that allowed her to do what she wanted to do. It was the agency that gave her. The pad removed a barrier. It didn't solve the problem. And knowing the difference is what keeps a pad as the bridge and not as a trap that we just get stuck in, or like a hamster wheel that we're on. It really can be a bridge, especially, and she was so clear about this, that she is doing whole body pelvic health. She knows that it makes sense and it works. That's her words. And so having that, it helped her to feel like she could do that. She didn't feel like she needed to avoid. And I know for so many of us, you know, that's kind of the difference. The bridge is taking us somewhere, but the trap is this feeling of avoidance and being stuck in the loop. This has made me really think. The question that she brought to me really made me think, what is a pad doing? The thing to avoid isn't the pad, it's just sleepwalking into permanence out of fear or passivity. Wear it on purpose, not by default, changes it completely. I feel so differently about the usefulness. I used to get, I'd be shouting at the TV and frustrated about pads. But now what I see is that they're a bridge. They're an opportunity to help if we're using it that way. It is not a solution, just like pessaries are not a solution. However, can they bridge the gap to help you along the pelvic floor journey, whatever you want to call it? It's so lame to say, but that's the truth. And why we need to know that, obviously we've talked before about the different types of incontinence, and we need to know that is still really important because it frames what the length of time or the kind of action of the pad. A pad is a short-term assistance, not a long-term solution, which is clear. That's what we're saying. But which problem you're assisting changes everything about your plan. Same leak, different cause, because stress is your pressure and timing problem, that cough and sneeze, you're jumping, laughing. A sudden spike in the pressure arrives and the pelvic floor doesn't meet it fast enough. It's not a weakness that you're experiencing. It's just that your body's not working in time. It's a recoil, that this responsive pelvic floor, and it responds beautifully to retraining. I mean, it is incredible how quickly you can retrain this response, which is the whole recoordination piece that we talk so much about. And it's really straightforward. Your urge incontinence is more of a signaling problem. So your retraining has to therefore be different. The bladder sends the time to go message. And it's like, now, urgent, let's go. And it's actually not full. It's a miscommunication between the bladder and the brain. And the work here is much more about calming and retraining that conversation, the communication that's going on there, not just squeeze and strengthen it. Of course, it's important to say that mixed is really common. You might have a bit of stress and a bit of urge. And most women in midlife, like myself, are not just in one neat box. I think in many aspects of our life. Mixed is both at once, and it is really common. So you might have a little bit of stress incontinence when you go out and do your weekly park run, and then when you come home from the school run, you might be trying to get in the front door as quick as possible to get to the toilet in time. And if that's you, you're not confused. You've got two things going on, and naming both is the start of the plan, basically, to move this forward. It's really, really, really important. So we go, okay, pads exist, but we decide what the reason is for us. So they exist as a short-term solution, and we're going to identify what type of incontinence we have. We're going to work on that whilst wearing a pad to assist us as the bridge, potentially, if you want to. I'm not telling you to wear a pad. I'm just saying this is an interesting reframe that I've gone through thinking about this. So know which type you have. Know what you need to do to support yourself. And then the pads will become unnecessary long term because you've done the underpinning work. You've built the foundations using whole body pelvic health to get you there. As I'm talking this through in this episode, it's really blowing my mind that I'm saying the things that I'm saying because it's such a reframe. And this is what happens to me regularly, working with real women in real time and reflecting on the questions, your questions. It really helps me to help you more clearly. It's your questions that I am here to support and bring maybe a different perspective on in this work. So as we come to wrap this up today, the honest case here is that it might help you get over the fear of exercising or retraining your bladder. Security first, so you'll actually move. Breathe, do some exercise with your body, do anything with, move about in any way, which will help your pelvic floor to relearn its timing. The fear of leaking itself is part of what keeps the pelvic floor braced and unresponsive. So if we remove that dread and the fear, restore the conditions for it to reconnect and re-coordinate and become spontaneous, then goodness, we're making massive progress, aren't we? Use the pad to do the work, not to avoid it. That's the real message. That's the real piece to take away today. So not to throw away your pads. That's the old shame in a new costume. You don't need to throw away. You need to know what you're using them for. Think about which camp are you actually in, and is it a choice or a flinch, action out of fear or avoidance? A barrier removed is not a problem solved. If you're in the flinch camp, what's one thing this week that the security of wearing a pad would let you do? Do you feel immediately when I asked you that question, if you wore a pad, what could you do? Does it make you feel a sense of optimism, maybe some relief, maybe some possibility? Capable is what choosing feels like. When you are conscious and you're choosing, you feel more capable naturally. And then that feeds into what you're capable of in your body. You can re-coordinate your pelvic floor. It's so possible. It is incredible. The feedback that I get constantly is almost instantly once you get into how the coordination works, it's magic. Because your body wants to heal, it wants to resolve it, it wants to have you relaxed and capable. Anyway, the first thing to do is recognize which type of incontinence you have. Then which camp are you in? And then what can you do this week if you wore a pad that would give you a little bit of security? If that's what you need to do, you might be listening and thinking, I don't need to wear a pad. Brilliant. let's still do whole body pelvic health. Let's still get the underpinning work done so that you can stay super duper continent. That's really important too. All right, team. Wow. What an episode. That has gone long today. Thank you for sticking with me. I really appreciate you going on this little thought process with me. And if there's one thing I want you to take from today, it's this. You're not broken, you're not behind, and you're certainly not alone. There's always hope for your pelvic floor. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And as always, if you have a moment to rate, review, and share the podcast, it really does help other women to find this important information so they too can have hope for their pelvic floor.